Good afternoon. Go ahead and get started. Obviously, I'm not Dean Ayers. He's a little bit under the weather today and couldn't make it, but I'm Courtney Shaw from the college alumni board. I actually serve as the MBA chairman of that committee. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn, and thanks everyone for being here. Let me just give you a quick debrief on our upcoming Lunch and Learn program. So you mark your calendars. March 20th at 11:30, we'll have Kiana Morris, the Chief Strategy Officer for the National Center for Health Statistics at the CDC. On June 12th at 11:30, we'll have Vicki Williams, the Chief HR Officer, NBC Universal and Director of Capital Management. And then October 16th at 11:30, we'll have Jay Farrow, EVP, Chief Information Technology and Product Officer, Clario. We'll make sure that we send out invites and get these on you all's calendars. Let me first start by saying we're thrilled to have Amy Odie as our January MBA Lunch and Learn speaker. Amy Odie is Executive Director of Launch Support at Chick-fil-A, overseeing the Leadership Development Program, company-operated restaurants, domestic and international restaurant launches, and the field talent staff of over 5,000 trainers nationwide. In this role, she has led the reorganization of Chick-fil-A's consulting model, aligning systems, processes, and people to better support operators and corporate staff. Amy's contributions include consulting directly with operators on leadership, people management, brand growth, financial stewardship, and customer experience. Notably, she became the first female consultant to advance from consultant to director, later serving as one of 6 regional directors of field operations. In this position, she led 360 Chick-fil-A restaurants, generating $1.5 billion in sales in 2015. I won't tell you, Amy, how much maybe I contributed to that. Driving innovative solutions and leadership development. Before joining Chick-fil-A, Amy co-founded a medical staffing company in Chicago, where she implemented an operational strategic plan, managed payroll and client invoice, and introduced an employee benefits package, growing the company to $8.5 million in annual revenue within 2 years. Amy holds a BS degree from Drake University and an MBA from the University of Georgia, and she completed the Advanced Management Program at the University of Chicago. She serves on the Board of Trustees at Drake University and participates in international mission trips with LifeShape, bringing her expertise and leadership to diverse settings. Help me welcome Amy Odie.
That was overly kind of an introduction. Thank you so much, Courtney. It is an honor to be here today and to share a little bit about my journey at Chick-fil-A the last over 2 decades. I joke with people, I've been at Chick-fil-A over 22 years. That does not make me old. It actually makes me experienced, and there is a very clear distinction there. But I thought we would start with a little bit of the history of Chick-fil-A and how that has informed the person that I am today. So let's start with this quick video.
Everything you know about fast food. This is not prepackaged frozen fried chicken. At the end of the day, it comes down to, are they receiving quality food? Because that's what's going to bring people back.
We're not chicken business, we're a people business, we're a relationship business.
Without Chick-fil-A, I don't think that I would be the person that I am today.
I want to be able to reach the community and make some difference in community's needs. Just make the city brighter by our presence.
We offer scholarships, and at my school it's really expensive, so it really helps me out that my job is willing to have my back.
If you've ever seen a moment when a person's life would be changed, you're about to see that moment, because these 12 members are being awarded a $25,000 True Inspirations Award.
There's also opportunities to make more money and help provide for your family.
At Chick-fil-A, I've always been encouraged to go to the next step.
You know, it's interesting. Every time I watch that video, I pick up something different. And, you know, the thread that I hope you hear and you see and that you experience every time you interact with anybody at Chick-fil-A, whether in the restaurants or beyond, is this passion around care, caring for others, and who we surround ourselves with, both in our support center, but also in our restaurants. That's what we really want to embody and stand for. You know, for those of you who didn't grow up on the south side of Atlanta, I want to take us on a little bit of a history lesson of Chick-fil-A and talk a little bit about Truett Cathy, our founder. Truett was born in 1921 and was raised in Eatonton, Georgia, just outside of the city. And really his spirit of hospitality began by serving alongside his mom, cooking and cleaning and looking after boarders in their homes. From there, he, like so many kids in that era, began to sell newspapers to his neighbors door to door, and then used to truck a little red wagon, just like many of us used to go around our neighborhoods in when we were little. His was filled with Cokes, and he would sell those Coca-Colas, and that's really what fueled his entrepreneurial spirit. And then in 1946, he started his first restaurant. It wasn't Chick-fil-A, actually. It was called the Dwarf Grill, actually because of the size of it. In that small diner, there were 10 bar top stools, and 4 seats in there. And so really the name was reflective of the size of that restaurant. He started this business with his brother, Ben, and later took advantage of some really unexpected opportunities. And in 1964, some of his friends came to him who were chicken suppliers. They were supplying chicken to a local airline company, and they had a surplus of chicken. And they said, "Hey, think you could do anything with this?" He had some extra time. Just before this had happened, he had a second restaurant that unfortunately burned down. So he had extra time on his hands, and he started to tinker. This is really where his entrepreneurial spirit really flourished. He used different spices and different cooking methods that created the iconic, most amazing chicken sandwich this world has ever seen. Would you agree with that? Yes. Clapping even. That was sort of marginally enthusiastic. I'll take it. And that chicken sandwich, the first of its kind, actually went totally, if I could say viral, I don't think anything went viral in the 60s, but whatever would be similar to being viral, that's what happened. And so in 1967, Truett opened the first Chick-fil-A restaurant in Greenbrier Mall. But the unique part of this story is that at the time, it may seem silly to us, but in 1967, there were no restaurants in malls. So Truett had to convince the mall developers that they needed a restaurant, that it wouldn't be dirty and smelly and stinky, that it actually would bring people to the mall and create a great guest experience. And like so much of what Truett did, he was right. And so in 1967, the first Chick-fil-A was introduced at Greenbrier Mall, and also our operator model. It was referenced in that video, and perhaps one of the unique distinctions at Chick-fil-A is our operator model, which really fuels local ownership of this brand. And that was introduced in 1967 as well. To meet the increasing demand of our customers and their cries for accessibility and locations closer to them, we opened our first freestanding building in the Druid Hills neighborhood of Atlanta. From there, we have grown not only across the US, but also internationally. In September of 2019, we expanded into Canada with our first store in downtown Toronto. Since then, we've also opened in Puerto Rico. And by the end of the month, I believe we will open our first permanent location in the UK. You know, when I think about Truett, there's so much of his life that and his legacy that continues on with us today. Truett led and facilitated our executive committee, which in 1982 perhaps created the most important part of Chick-fil-A's history, and it is our corporate purpose. Our corporate purpose is to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us, and to be a positive influence on everybody we come in contact with. And, you know, it's interesting when you think about working for a company like that, think about that idea of being a positive influence on everybody you come in contact with. Think about the last time you traveled at the airport during the holidays. Could you say you were a positive influence on everybody you came in contact with? Right? I think it was a really good challenge and continues to be a great challenge for all of us. We want to be bridge builders at Chick-fil-A. So much of what we talk about, it goes far beyond the four walls of our restaurants. It really is about how can we individually and collectively make a difference in the world and really make everybody's lives better. We get to do that through the vehicle of chicken in our restaurants, and then we get to do that through vehicles that we have outside of work as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about the history of Chick-fil-A. Let's now talk about where we are today. So that first restaurant started on the south side of Atlanta. We have over 3,000 Chick-fil-A's now, all different concepts all over the country, New York to LA, Seattle to Atlanta, Chicago to Houston, and like I said, Canada, Puerto Rico, and now the UK. And Singapore was announced will be opening later this year as well. You saw in the video, one of the things that we're deeply passionate about is making a difference. And again, that positive influence piece where Truett's legacy continues to live on. Some of the highlights here. In 2012, we partnered with the Shared Table Program. And in almost every one of our restaurants and at every one of our openings, we give $25,000 back to local communities. And we've supplied over 25 million meals to communities around our restaurants. Again, to be a positive influence on all we come in contact with. And while accolades, we really don't celebrate these much. We really want to be known as a place everybody can trust. You know, before actually even being a staff member, I consider myself a customer. I have two teenagers, well, 20 and 18. And during COVID, I think we spent, you know, I don't even know. I don't ever want to know how much money my teenagers spent at Chick-fil-A. But we went to Chick-fil-A almost every day because we trust Chick-fil-A. We trust the operators that are our friends, and we know that we're going to do the right thing. And I think that's how we want to be known. We want to be known by our customers as people you can trust, but we also want to be known by parents who are sending their kids to work at Chick-fil-A and by people who want to be employed by Chick-fil-A as an organization that's just going to care for you and make you better. And innovation, you know, Chick-fil-A has always been a company of innovation, and that really started with Truett. This idea that we always want to be relevant to the needs of customers and those that we're employing, and innovation is happening all over at Chick-fil-A. This building right here, it is the first of its kind. It's an elevated 4-lane drive-through. We opened up last fall on the south side of Atlanta. If you want to take a little tour down there, we have two of the leaders from that store here today. They can tell you all about it. But we're constantly innovating, whether it's the app, whether it's new restaurant concepts, whether it's going to new areas of the world, even tinkering with our menu. we're always looking to see, hey, not only what do we need to be doing today, but how do we meet the demands of our customers into the future, and how do we do that really well? So again, a little bit about Chick-fil-A, where we've been, where we're going. Now I want to just transition and share a little bit about the journey that I've been on and how this incredible brand has impacted me, and just a few of the lessons that I've picked up along the way that I think maybe could help. And I'm going to start with this acrostic. I don't know about you. At Chick-fil-A, we have acronyms kind of for everything. Maybe we're the only company. Is that you guys have acronyms at your businesses as well? So I'll start with an acrostic. And really my hope today is for you to at least pick up one thing that you can take back and consider doing maybe a little bit different, a little bit more intentionally from our time. So I'm going to start with this idea of safeguarding our health. You know, I've read so many studies the last kind of year and a half around this idea that we are all living longer than we've ever lived in the past. Our health is more important than ever. And when I think about safeguarding our health, it's not just this idea of, hey, you should run a little bit more or exercise a little bit more. It's so much broader than that. It's around your health spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. You know, when I think of this journey we've been on at Chick-fil-A, Dan Cathy, our now chairman, he had this experience that he shared with us. It was this idea of like being fit to lead. Are you really fit to lead? We were challenged. We were running races all over the world. It felt like, you know, we're a little competitive at Chick-fil-A. So lots of people were running marathons, a little overwhelming at the time. But here is my challenge and encouragement. If you're anything like me, all of those things that help me safeguard my health are the first things that come off my calendar when something comes up at work. I never used to have things like working out or even time to meditate and just be on my calendar, and that has shifted. So my encouragement is when you think about what are your priorities for even 2025, I want you to go back and look at your calendar. And I want you to look at your list of priorities, even just 2 or 3 things. And are those priorities reflective on your calendar? And I'm going to guess the answer is no. And so pick one thing that you want to prioritize in this space for 2025 to safeguard your health. Next, you know, this idea of purpose became very personal to me. You know, when I came, Courtney shared, I was the first married female consultant at Chick-fil-A. So thus I was the first one to have babies. And, you know, the reality is for a long time, I thought my purpose at Chick-fil-A was to be the pioneer of female leadership, the pioneer of a working mom. And I will tell you, it was exhausting. I was almost so much more worried about what other people were thinking of what I was doing. And if I failed, was I going to be failing future female leaders that came in? And I had a lot of help, teammates, executive coaches that really helped me hone in on what is my purpose. And my purpose, I believe, is to help people be the best versions of themselves. That purpose is timeless. That purpose is not dependent on what's going on in the environment around or if a pandemic hits our country. And so my encouragement to you is figure out what is your purpose. Hopefully it can be holistic and not just something that you have at work and then something that you have at home, but something that's holistic in nature that really can inspire you and get you excited to wake up in the worst of days that you can make a difference in people's lives. So again, first is safeguard your health and then honor your purpose. Next is investing in deep personal relationships. You know, one of the things that we talk about a lot at Chick-fil-A is people over profits. People over profits. You heard it even in the video. Some of those team members in restaurants talk about, hey, we're not in the chicken business, we're in the people business. And that's very real. I have had the unbelievable privilege of being raised by the greatest people I have ever met. And they're my teammates at work. And I've heard so many times by friends of mine that are like, oh yeah, it's kind of separation of church and state. I'm not friends with my coworkers. That's really weird. There have been numerous studies. Marcus Buckingham with Gallup posted one several years ago that said people are more engaged when their best friends are at work. Or I'll say it different. When you have a best friend at work, you are more engaged. And so my encouragement is let your guard down. Be willing to be vulnerable. You will misstep. You will say the wrong things. You'll do the wrong things. You'll overshare. I overshare way too much. My colleagues can attest to that. But it allows people to come into my life. So when the greatest of experiences are happening, I have people to celebrate with, and so many people to celebrate with. But also, when I'm going through the most challenging of times, I have so many people to be there with me to say, hey, the best is still yet to come. And so my encouragement is invest in deep personal relationships. Okay, so I'm going to get on a soapbox a little bit here. If there was one thing that I was probably most passionate about, it would be this right here, intentional imbalance. So indulge me for a second. I want to tell you that work-life balance does not exist, period. In 1817, Robert Owen, who was a manufacturer and a lobbyist over in the UK, he revolutionized this idea that, hey, all of blue collar workers at the time, they were working about 12 to 15-hour days at a minimum. And he said, no more. So he was really ahead of his time, and he created this idea of work-life balance. So we would work for 8 hours, we'd rest for 8 hours, and then we would do some sort of recreation for 8 hours. Somebody asked me recently, so if you could go back in time, one of those like meeting join-up questions, right? If you could go back in time and meet anybody, who would you like to meet? So besides Jesus, so let's just say he's like the given on the middle of the bingo card, I would want to go back and meet Robert Owen. And I would want to punch him in the face. That's what I'll say. Because I think for decades and decades, men and women alike have been searching for this like pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, this idea of work-life balance. And I'll speak for myself. There were so many days that I felt like I was failing at work because I wasn't as engaged or involved as I needed to be. And then I also felt like I was failing as a mom because I was never at the bake sale. I can't really bake at all. And I wasn't the PTA president and all of those other things that all the other moms seemingly were doing. And so what I want to encourage you to consider is this idea of intentional imbalance, that the goal is over the course of our lives, we achieve balance, but not in any one given moment, week even, we will achieve this perfect balance. And so I encourage you to be intentional about what you're going to be in balance, focused around, and then surrounding yourself with people that are going to help you ensure that you're not in that season too long, One of the things, the example of this I'll share, my daughter is a junior in college now, and her senior year was the year of Allie Odie. I shared that with my team. Of course, I was not a slacker at work. I got all of my core responsibilities done, but I didn't want to miss anything of her lasts. I was supposed to speak at an opening we had up in Canada, actually. And because of how the basketball schedule happened, her last basketball game of her career was going to be the night I was supposed to be in Canada. And so I said, hey, I don't want to miss her last game. Somebody else on my team jumped in and they went up there and I'm sure did an even better job than I was going to do. And I was there and I was present for her game. Fast forward a year later, one of the guys on my team, his daughter was about to graduate high school, and he came up to me and he said, I want to thank you so much for the year of Allie Odie, because it gave me the permission to have the year of Avery Calloway. And in her senior year, I never missed the big things. And when you invest in deep personal relationships, like I talked about a minute ago, people want to help you and support you so that you never miss those big things that you want to be intentionally imbalanced around. And so again, this idea, work-life balance, divorce yourself from that. It is really about intentional imbalance. And then finally, embrace life's joys. It would be silly of me to have a picture of embracing life's joys without something related to Georgia. Would that be accurate? Right? This is right before our dogs became SEC champions a few weeks ago. We won't talk about what happened in New Orleans. But somebody recently told me this idea of, hey, no one ever regretted buying the ticket. Now, it was in relation to a Taylor Swift concert in all transparency, but I believe that to be true, right? Embracing life's joys, do the thing, buy the ticket, experience the experiences. and do it with people that you really love to be with. You know, I think that we all work really hard. You're in this room because you're a learner and you like to connect with people and you like to pour into people and you like to grow. I think it's so important that we stop, not literally and smell the roses, but we stop and we embrace life's joys, the big ones, the little ones, and all of them in between. For so long in my career, I showed up. I've loved what I've gotten to do at Chick-fil-A. But I showed up in the way that I thought I was supposed to, and the way I was supposed to. And this idea, I love this quote by Brené Brown, this idea of, hey, how can we help people be their authentic selves, as imperfect as that is? I've had the privilege to grow up at Chick-fil-A. I've had the privilege to grow up in a company where I am embraced and even celebrated for my imperfections. And my hope is that everybody can find that place, that you can be surrounded by people who genuinely care about you, that are going to help you safeguard your health, hone in on your purpose, and live out your purpose. Live with the intentional imbalance that we talked about, build strong, rich, lifelong relationships and friendships, and enjoy the journey, and be authentically and imperfectly yourself. I think it's only then that we really can believe that the best is yet to come. A phrase that I'm kind of known for. I really do believe that to be true, that when we do this together and we have great intentions, the best is yet to come. I love watching movies. I love sports. I was an athlete. My kids remind me I'm a retired athlete. And I think that when I think of everything that is Chick-fil-A and the spirit that is Chick-fil-A, I think that this encapsulates it.
So I've been hearing this phrase y'all got over here that I ain't too crazy about. It's the hope that kills you. Y'all know that? I disagree. I think it's the lack of hope that comes to get you. See, I believe in hope. I believe in belief. Now, where I'm from, you guys saying too. Yeah? Question actually. Do you believe in miracles? Now, I don't need y'all to answer that question for me. But I do want you to answer that question for yourselves. Right now. Do you believe in miracles?
Football is life.
I talk a lot about Chick-fil-A and the experience that I've had, and so often, and maybe many of you are sitting here like, bless her heart. That isn't really how companies work, Aim. All those, how do I let my light shine? I can't do that where I work. I'm not going to suggest you should change jobs. That surely is not my intent today. But my prayer for you is that you can be in a place where you can thrive and that you have really the belief that the best is yet to come. I love the part of that video that is the greatest to me is that at the end where they're all putting their hands on the sign together. I've had the privilege of working for an organization where we literally and figuratively have been doing that since Truett started it. We may disagree. We surely aren't aligned with all of what we should prioritize sometimes, just like any other company. But at the end of the day, we care deeply for one another. It's impacted the way that I show up, not only to work, but the way I show up as a wife, the way I show up as a mom, the way I show up as a friend. And I pray that you guys have the same type of experience in your organizations as well. We have time now, I think, for Q&A. So I'm going to open it up to the group for any thoughts, questions that you guys may have.
There are mics floating around, and make sure that you signal for microphone because you are recording for the college webcast. Thank you. Other questions? I'll take it. Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you. It's on. The point that you made about intentional work-life imbalance. That's remarkable. I've actually never heard that. But what's also interesting is that like we all have goals in different parts of our lives. And so if we're going to intentionally imbalance some of those things, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about what that looks like on a practical level. So for me, I'm a software engineer and I have lots of professional goals, but I'm also a CrossFit athlete. So how am I, is the answer to just brutally prioritize every minute of the day? Or is it to take things one step at a time, goals in one portion of my life than other?
Right. So I would, so one, congratulations on being a CrossFit athlete. I think you're a whole nother level. Here's what I would say. I think that you can do everything. You can't do everything with excellence is another way to consider that. And so in a given season, one, I would remind you, you're playing the long game, like in everything, unless you're going for like a CrossFit national champion this year, that's not long game. But career-wise, I would encourage you that you're playing the long game. And so be considerate of that as you're thinking about, hey, how am I prioritizing growing in my career? But at any given season, let's just say this week. So there may be things at work that you should say no to so that you can go and be great at what you're doing at CrossFit, and then vice versa as well. And so I think part of it is saying no to good so that you can say yes to great. That's another way to think about it. I'll liken it. It doesn't look like maybe you have kids. But one of the things when I became a mom, I hope that wasn't offensive. When I became a mom, I think that one of the challenges was, you want to work 60 hours a week at work and then be a mom. The math doesn't add up. And so there were certain things that, I mean, I even have teammates here that helped me figure out, okay, don't do that so you could do this at home. My daughter's first birthday was the week of a grand opening at Chick-fil-A. And at the time, our team would go Monday through Friday to these openings, and her birthday was Wednesday, of course. And I'll never forget one of my teammates at the time. I was like, you guys, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, moms don't miss birthdays. Moms don't miss birthdays. And so my team pitched in. Actually, my boss and one of my colleagues went and did the thing for me so I could be intentionally imbalanced at home. And then since then, no one on my team has like missed birthdays, moms or dads, by the way. So I think it is like calendaring it out for sure, but also when the things come up at work that you can say yes to, really check yourself. Like in this season, do I need to say yes to this? And I'm telling you, you don't need to say yes to everything despite what you think.
Hi, Amy. Chick-fil-A, like any company, has had events that the media has spun in a negative way. Talk to me about how the company that has the culture that you guys have, how you embrace those challenges and overcome them and internally process them.
Yeah, that's a great question, Blake. So I think like any challenge that comes up personally or professionally, it really makes you kind of come back to, okay, what are we about? What's our purpose? And I could speak to almost every challenge that we face in the 22 years at Chick-fil-A. It's really brought us back to what do we stand for? What is our corporate purpose? And it really is to show care and be a positive influence on all that we come in contact with and to stay in our lane. We surely don't need to get into any political space, but let's focus on creating a great guest experience in our restaurants where our customers experience care every time that they come in. And that's really where it's really helped us get more focused on what we're all about and how we want people to experience us.
Hi, Amy. So I'm on Amy's team, and she's literally the best boss I've ever met. So I'll just go and say that I've been with Chick-fil-A 13 years and still the best boss ever. Amy, my question for you is, hopefully after today, some of those topics were inspired, and some of us want to take those actions and take the lead on some of those topics and being a pioneer. And you were a pioneer yourself for being a female consultant, being a mom, being a wife. Myself, I'm a new mom this past year, so I'm kind of living and working through all those adversities myself as well. But when you were starting out as a pioneer, as a mom, as a female consultant, how did you find strength? And how do you encourage all of us, if we wanted to pioneer in any areas, how do we find strengths like how you did back in the days?
Yeah, I really, not to sound silly because some of them are sitting here, but like my team, I think you figure out what your purpose is and what really drives you and what brings you energy and joy. And I have words around it now, like what my purpose is. I think there are so many things in that season that I was able to kind of live in that space. And at Chick-fil-A, really, if you have a passion to serve others, there are so many ways that you can live that out within our support center and also in the restaurants, and getting to pour into people and have a small part of changing people's life's trajectory. It made it all worth it. You know, the trips that you would take when you leave your husband and your kids behind, when you knew that you were making a difference and you could see it in tangible, real ways, it made everything worth it. Yeah, period. And so I think figuring out what are those things that make it worth it and that you are really inspired by every day, that's what I would encourage you to figure out. Yeah.
Hey, Amy, this is, first of all, thank you. First time question, long time consumer of Chick-fil-A. I just checked my points balance and I don't know how it got so high, but that's a different story. First, thank you so much for the positivity and the message today. I think there's a lot of crazy stuff happening in the world, so it's just super refreshing for you to do this. I wanted to talk about or question around the change in marketing approach. We love the TV. I mean, it's hard not to love Chick-fil-A when you talk about it being a people business. You see the ads with the operator sharing stories, personal stories about how they've impacted their community. Brilliant. Love it, right? It's almost like correlation between watching that ad and going to a store is pretty high for me. Did the cows go away? Are we still doing the cows, or is there a heightened emphasis or de-emphasizing of the cows and more people? Just any thoughts there?
It is really interesting to me how passionate people are about our cows. Like, I think they kind of feel like they're a bit like their family members, like the sacred cow, no pun intended. I will say, so I could talk in depth about lots of things at Chick-fil-A. There are experts in our marketing department that could tell you what our actual strategy is. The cows have not gone away. I do think it's like anything. I think you're always trying to figure out how to have the most relevant message to all the different audiences. We were talking actually before we started here today. And if you think of just the guys at your table right there, if you were to ask all 5 of you, what's the best way Chick-fil-A could market? One of you, maybe you, would say the cows. One would be lead with food. One would be tell us the red couch commercials. And so trying to hit all of the different ways that we can connect with customers is, I think, where we are right now. And I think you'll still see plenty of the cows in the future.
Thank you.
They're not going away. Not going away.
Hey, good afternoon, Amy. You mentioned investing in relationships and being friends with the people that you work with. Does that ever complicate things in terms of when you have to make difficult decisions, give difficult feedback? How do you navigate that when you're friends with the people you work with?
That's a great question. So if, in case the mic wasn't working, he asked, is it hard sometimes to have difficult conversations with people that you're close with? So I'm from Chicago. And so I speak a little bit of a different language. I'm a little bit more direct, a little bit more feisty. And I fundamentally believe, and I've seen it played out, I believe that the closer you are with somebody, the easier actually it is to have tough conversations. Because if I know where your heart is and you know where my heart is, I may be able to overstep unintentionally sometimes. And there will be kind of like an umbrella of grace. And so I do think it is tricky. I'm not minimizing it or being soft about it at all. But I do think if we're close and you know what my goals are and you're trying to help me accomplish those, I think those conversations become easier. I will say too, I'll speak to the leadership development program at Chick-fil-A. Those are folks, most of which want to become operators. They're younger in career, need a little bit more leadership maturity. And so when we know what their goals are, we are very direct with feedback and we are friendly with them for sure. And here's how I kind of approach it is that, so I'm going to give you feedback because you've told me where you want to be. You can listen to my feedback and make these tweaks or changes, or you can change where you want to go. And I'm actually great either way, but I'm here to serve you and you've invited me in. And so that's kind of what you get. So I do think like the deeper the relationships, I actually think the easier those conversations come because you guys kind of, your hearts are in it together.
Hey, I'm Taj Anderson. I'm currently in a program now, the PMK.
Go Dogs, by the way. The only one with the
Dogs.
Georgia Bulldogs, anything, except for my husband.
I first wanted to say thank you for normalizing intentional imbalance. The professional way that you put it was great. I always go by work hard, play hard, work harder, play harder. And my mom always asks me, well, when do you take a break? I said, if you work hard, the break would present itself. So I thank you for that one. Just to sum it up perfectly in those 3 words was perfect. My question was, do the company have guidelines set in place, and how are those implemented to ensure that the business is not overriding the culture of being a pillar to the community?
So ask that differently. I want to make sure
How does the company ensure that service in various different ways is the priority before business decisions are made?
Right. So we talk, I think I got you. If I'm off track, you can redirect me. So one of the things at Chick-fil-A, we talk a lot about the importance of serving others. I mean, and there's so many ways our teams are in the communities, and we are doing everything from some groups are doing Habitat for Humanity, some are doing Salvation Army type of volunteer work, things like that. But also even the way we track, whether it's scholarships, we've given away millions, I think in 2023 alone, over $25 million in scholarships for education. Education is a huge pillar of ours as we think about how we can make a difference in communities. And so not only are we doing it at individual levels, and that's encouraged organizationally, but as a company, as an enterprise, we're also doing that. And it's something that we track and we celebrate as much as anything else. So I think you see examples of it from the highest of leaders and then through all of us as well. And that's something that is really important.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shantea Stanford, and I went to school with Amy. We were in the same MBA class, so great to see you
Great
again.
to see you too.
My question is around expanding internationally. Since it is more of a U.S. organization, what are some of the training or some of the key points you would want to emphasize internationally, say like in Singapore or, countries that have a different religious culture in general?
Right. It's interesting. I don't know how many of you followed Target's expansion into Canada several years ago. I think so often we think, oh, well, it has to be like another country way far away with a different language and fundamentally different culture for it to be challenging. Target failed significantly in Canada because of things that seem very simple: supply chain, understanding consumers. I really, again, there's another whole group of our staff at the office and in Singapore and now in the UK that can speak more into the dynamics of those markets specifically. But I think it's just the same as it is here, is really understanding the consumer behaviors, really understanding how we can come along, not just to be successful in business, but how we can do so many of these things in supporting, whether it's, again, education or those communities. How do we uniquely do that as well when we go international? And I think our Canadian expansion was the first one that really challenged us on how, because Canada is way different than I would have thought. It kind of just seems like Northern Michigan. It is not that way. It's very different. And so I think it's equipped us with the right questions to ask to position us to be more successful, still with challenges in those overseas markets. I think having people in market too is a difference maker, which we've done. That's a great question.
I think it's fair to say that Chick-fil-A is, you focused on culture quite a bit, right, since the beginning, and you've had above average success as compared to industry average when it comes to your focus for culture. So if you're thinking about, or even talking with other industry leaders, not that Chick-fil-A has the magic pill of culture across all industries, but is there something that you feel that Chick-fil-A does that if other industries or other companies were able to do, that it would potentially fix churn problems?
So us telling everyone else what to do seems a little arrogant and so un-Chick-fil-A like, but I'll share with you what has worked for us. I really believe is a differentiator. One is when you think about the franchise model that we have, it is fundamentally different than anywhere else. And it really is local ownership with the support of this big brand. And I really think that's a game changer. When my operator, the one who I get all my points from and my kids do, his kids go to school with my friends' kids, and we see each other at the grocery store, and there's a different level of connection. And then where that shows up is how he hires his team. Because now it's not somebody who may live in Chicago but has like Georgia territory and doesn't really know the dynamics day to day. His team is serving his friends and their teachers and all of that. So I think that the operator model was a fundamental game changer for Chick-fil-A and how you guys all experience everything that we do. I would say that number one. And this whole idea of people over profits, profits matter. I mean, Truett at the end of the day, he wanted to make money. I mean, period. I could tell some really funny stories about that, but never at risking the relationships that were involved. And, you know, I tell this story, it may sound silly, it's very dated now. I remember we do a visions and values tour with all staff and operators that come on to in with Chick-fil-A, and Dan Cathy used to host it. And I remember this one moment, I was dropping my kids off at Chick-fil-A daycare, which is amazing. And I'll say they were 5 and 3. So this is about 15 years ago. And Dan grabs me, and of course he's introducing me to a busload of people. And he's like, Aim, tell him about your kid, all of this stuff, puts me on the spot. Every time he shared like, what are you most proud of? And I started talking about work stuff because I thought that's what he wanted me to talk about. And he stopped me. He's like, no, what are you most proud of with them? And then he challenged me, when's the last date night you had with Mark? Not one time did he ask me in that interaction or any others, and nor has any executive been like, what's the profits in your region? What's going on? Now they'll say, hey, how's this operator? And I heard, you know, his wife was sick, or, hey, how's your teammate doing? I heard that their son was, you know, in a bicycle accident. I mean, those are the conversations. And if you're like a lot of my friends that I interact with outside of Chick-fil-A, you're probably, again, bless your heart. It works. When you really invest in people and they feel genuinely cared for, we work harder because I don't want to let people down in the healthiest of ways. And I think when you have this big, huge organization, 3,500-ish staff, you know, 2,500 operators that really feel cared for, they're going to make the right decisions and then success will follow. And we've experienced that. I mean, focus on people. I mean, which sounds easy. Why don't other people do it? I don't know. We're also privately held. That does matter. Yeah.
I have a question. So say you're in an organization that maybe doesn't have the same culture as Chick-fil-A, but how as a leader would you recommend kind of building what you spoke about with your own team and kind of helping them normalize that imbalance of intentional imbalance? Like, how do you do that within a team that isn't necessarily within the organization in the same way?
Yeah. I think everything starts with how you behave and how you show up as a leader. I mean, I think that matters. Number one. Number two, I think from the beginning at Chick-fil-A, and I think what we tried to employ is really knowing your staff and your team intimately. Like, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? So even the example in the back, I'm a software engineer and I'm a CrossFit, helping those people figure out how to intentionally imbalance their work and then celebrate. One of a girl joined our team about 18 months ago, and she shared in her interview with me, it was super random actually, she was doing her first ever weightlifting competition. I think she started with our team in August or September, and this competition was in October. And 3 of our teammates showed up to this competition, more than actually her family. And they didn't even know her full name. They just knew her name was Carly, and she was in a competition, and we're going to support her. And it was a big deal to her. And I'll tell you, I didn't tell anyone to go. I didn't even talk about it as much as others. If you, though, create this environment where you're demonstrating like how to do that well with people, and then you know people intimately and what really is thrilling to them and triggering them and they're passionate about, and then you celebrate that, I think people will follow. Yeah. And it's way funner too, by the way. We made a little fake medal for her, and we had a trophy we gave to her at the office the next day. And I mean, you talk about a good way to introduce yourself to a team. Like, she's a pretty tough chick. Like, she won the competition too, by the way, which was fun.
So I'm a recent graduate. I graduated in 2024 with my PMBA. What advice would you give to somebody that's looking to grow their career while also embracing the imperfect balance, but not overcommitting to every project that hits their desk at work?
Yeah, that's really tricky. I'm going to use a recent example, and this is going to sound silly, but I'll make a point. So my son just started college at Wake Forest, and he called the second week. It was a Thursday night, and he was like, "You guys, I mean, there's another party tonight." And I went to parties every night last week, and our son is not a partier. He needs his sleep, and he's like, "And this party doesn't even start till 11." Which made me so happy as a mom that like that's a concern of his. My daughter was very different probably. And here's what I said. I said, do everything once. Go to every party once until you know then, hey, these are the ones I don't need to go to. These are the ones I for sure want to go to. And then these in the middle, if I don't need sleep or I can make it happen, do it. Now, what does that matter to you? I think it's the same thing with work, right? Figure out what parties you like, these are the non-negotiables. I have to go to these or I want to learn or grow or meet new people. What are the ones that you probably can think of it right now that you're like, I don't need to do these and I'm not going to get in trouble. Of course, there's some baseline things you have to do that we don't want to do. I get. And then what are the things in the middle that you can kind of pick and choose based on maybe availability or whatever's maybe happening in a season? That would be my encouragement.
Thank you.
Yeah. But go to all the parties first. Is what I think.
More questions? Concludes our program. First off, let me thank First Carolina Bank as our sponsor. I know there are some of you in the room. Also, special thanks to Amy for taking time today out of your busy schedule to be here and share with us. And as a token of our appreciation, we'd like to give you Bulldog Trophy. And go Dogs.
Yes, thank you so much. I did say I want to get on that dog though.
Just as a quick reminder, parking validation at the registration table, and don't forget registration is open for our upcoming MBA Lunch and Learns. Thank you and have a great rest of the week.